Could microscopic organisms hold the key to solving our global plastics crisis, reducing environmental pollution and the levels of microplastics in our bodies? My guest today believes that addressing the plastics problem isn't just about recycling, it's about rethinking the materials themselves. He is the founder and CEO of ChakraTech, a company engineering next-generation bioplastics built for true sustainability, from their renewable origins to their safe return to the environment. His journey has taken him from chemical engineering in India to microbial biotechnology in the US, and now to the cutting edge of circular economy innovation. We'll talk about how his scientific curiosity, entrepreneurial spirit, and a few chance encounters have fueled his mission to create materials that could serve human health and improve the planet. This is the Discovery Arc podcast. I am Drew Duglin, and today, let us welcome Ravi Chawla. You're the biggest influencer in bioplastics that I know.
Oh, thank you. We're trying. We were trying to raise awareness, so we're gonna do it together.
Cool. Well, maybe that's a good place to jump in. You know, what are bioplastics? Let's begin there.
Okay, I'm glad you asked that question because I think that word might mean a lot of different things to different people, and there's a lot of confusion. So I think maybe there is a place to start and clear up the word. So the word plastic and bio, right? So bio-derived plastic, that's what basically it means. But there's a lot of confusion of what happens to it towards end of life. So that word is agnostic to the end of life and also how it's made actually, even though there's word bio in it. So to think about it, there are three primary modes to think about it. There are these biodegradable polymers that are derived by bio, which is what I think most of people think implied manner. So let's say if you had sugarcane as a feedstock that you wanted to use, so you extract sugar out of it, or you take cornstarch, you feed microbes, it'll give you a polymer or plastic that is bio-based bioplastic. So that's what it means in one use cases. And actually, these are the ones that exist in the store most frequently. So when you go to the store and you see, at your Vons or HEB, whatever store is closest to your house, you say plant-based. They're actually derived from plant-based sources. But that necessarily doesn't mean that it degrades in any condition. It requires special. So if you see the fine print would say it's industrially compostable. So it requires certain conditions for it to degrade. The next category is bio-based and biodegradable. So these are truly biodegradable and basically compostable under your home condition. And they're still derived from renewable sources like your sugar cane, or if you think about waste as a product that can be used to make a plastic. So that's the second category. And in that case, it has the benefits of biodegradability, true biodegradability. So that's my favorite kind. That's what I jam about. But there's also, just to add to for the completion's sake, is that some people still use fossil fuel feedstocks as a way of calling it bioplastic. So there are some types of bioplastics that use fossil fuel as a precursor, and these plastics degrade. And now people, but you're calling it bioplastic, but its origin is fossil fuel based. And so there's really a lot of confusion. But I think the key term to think about for any of those who really want to think about it carefully and deeply is okay, it's bio-based, right? Is it biodegradable? Like if the people are claiming biodegradability, what does it mean? Does it mean industrial composting or is it home composting? And what were the sources? What were the original sources that were used to make the plastic? So it's a catch-all term that's used to describe a variety of things. But I think for a truly sustainable future, we have to not only think about how plastics are made, so replace petroleum-based plastics, but also what happens to it at its end of life. So those are very key pieces.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought that up with I guess almost the corrupting of the language. It makes me think of like organic, in stores. It's like, oh, what does that actually mean? There's like several different tiers now of like what organic food is.
You're spot on. Actually, as we're building the company and within our internal discussions, this comes up quite often that there's your average consumer does not have the patience or the time to figure out all these distinctions. So we are thinking of even coming up a new term, like new these are new type of biomaterials, so that the entire burden that comes around plastic or plastic recycling. And often, actually, when I even go pitch my company, after I've given my pitch, like I've spoken for like a couple of minutes, and then everybody say, "Oh, another recycling company," and I'm like, "No, no, 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 that's not what we're doing." So, and so I think it's both on us as consumers and as company building the technology, that how do we raise awareness and education about some of these technologies that we are building.
Yeah, definitely. And then on the side of the actual materials, do they function like normal plastics? And like, what are some of the sort of applications there then?
Okay, no, great. Again, another excellent question. So, yes, plastics have become such an integral part of our life. Actually, we cannot be where we are or even continue supporting the growth of the civilization without plastics. So it's crucial that if you want to find an alternative, that it needs to function the same way. So the ones that we are particularly interested in, they're type of biopolyesters. So they closely mimic your traditional polyesters in properties. And again, they're range of these polymers. They're like about 150 known polymer, and it closely mimics one or the other traditional plastic. So yes, it has the functionality of your traditional plastics. Not all of them, right? So for example, in some cases, they may not be able to tolerate extreme temperature, but like for some of the everyday use cases, we are not experiencing extremely high heat, right? Like high heat, like what you'd experience in a furnace. So there are use cases where it meets the properties of easily replaceable single-use plastics, and in other cases where you actually don't want them to degrade for maybe even a longer chunk of time. So there are use cases, but majority of the waste that we see and everything that we see around it are single use. So our plastics can indeed mimic traditional plastics like polypropylene in properties, and that's what we're most excited about.
Nice. Do you see certain like specific industries that seem like more interested in this than others in the bio
Yes.
side?
Yeah. So actually, when we were starting out, we were pursuing, right. Obviously, like as if we were to think from a consumer perspective, I I want to replace the plastic on the utensils that you buy from the store, the single use plastics. But commodity is not the way. Well, people have tried it in the past, and as well as there's a stark difference between what people would say and what they would pay for. So your average person would say that, oh, I want this product, but nobody's willing to pay a slightly higher charge on or the premium, the green premium as it's termed. So through to last year, we have actually finished over 100 customer discovery interviews. That's like the fun part of being in a startup, where we are very centric to what the needs of the customers are, and how where those industries may lie. Right. So we have been the categories range from uh, sustainability departments in lot of large organizations, right? So these big corporations have sustainability goals, and they're looking for those metrics, so we talk to them. But also medical applications, or lab applications. And I know both you and I have spent time in labs, so we know how much plastic waste even labs generate, right? And that's a pretty large number, actually, recently, as I'm learning. So within those broad fields, as I mentioned, right, like food packaging or lab grade packaging or specialty applications. So indeed, we see that even though broadly we see, like, across the board, everybody says the sustainability is important, the number of early adopters are sort of like niche, where they're able to, they're driven by a certain metric to be sustainable, and reduce plastic production, or carbon emissions by a certain extent. So those are the key drivers. Although broadly in market, you see, I think I'm trying to recall, I haven't met anybody who hasn't said sustainability is not a thing. But also there's a gap between sustainability and the adoption.
Yeah, I mean the real innovation, right, lies in the human adoption, and often it is those niches, people on the fringes that are sort of the early adopters before it kind of can get enough speed and reach critical threshold to take off.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I agree.
Yeah. So I mean, before we kind of continue, Ravi, how did we even get here? I know we've talked a little bit in the past about some of your, you know, biographical info, I suppose, but where did this sort of scientific curiosity, I guess, come from? Were you always interested in engineering, bioengineering, biology? Take me back to that.
This is a good question where, it's hard to pinpoint an exact moment, though. It's, I think what's innate versus what's part of, picked up through experience. I do think like part of it runs in the family. I think we're just, very curious people. But I think there was one geography teacher in seventh grade that I do think about. And what she implored all of us to do in the class was just like think about your the world around you and try to explain how it works. And that was, I think that was that kind of spurred all the gears in motion. And what I'd do is every day I maintained a notebook, and every day I'd write out the questions. I was like, oh, how, for example, how does the rainbow exist, right? And it can be explained by the laws of physics, but what did I know as a seventh grader? How does a remote work? So any nothing was out of question, right? So how do we understand the physical world through that lens? So I started maintaining a notebook, and I would go to that teacher every single day. The following day I was like, oh, this is what I have. And even though she was a geography teacher, some of these questions are clearly out of the realm, right, and may require some advanced knowledge of physics and chemistry and maths to understand. So what she would do was, she was very kind, and I think she was very curious herself. She would go talk to advanced chemistry professors or teachers, and she would get me an answer that, as a seventh grader, I could understand, even including sometimes advanced math that did not. Did not have the enough. I didn't understand calculus, of course, but I was like that. That started setting up. I was like, oh, you can understand that. I would have never thought that she'd be able to explain. So I think I probably had a target that I want to get her to not be able to explain things. I was like, oh, there must be a limit. But everything that I was coming up with, like there was like at least a remote touch of understanding that she could bring in, and I think that just inspired. I've always wanted to be like her, like, okay, if I don't know the answer to a certain question, no matter the field, right? Like I think it's now goes even beyond science and engineering, but that kind of really triggered the interest. And I stopped failing classes relatively, and then I started to self-teach myself. That either so my model was, or maybe the reason I was failing was, there was a very undue emphasis on rote memorization, and I could not do that. And the words that they used in science classes did not make sense to me. I'm like, oh, I don't understand what you're talking about. So the result was I failed. But once I made it a point that I'm going to self-learn and going to make sure that okay, I can't memorize, but whatever part I'm going to do, I'm going to understand. That became really the pivotal point on doing well later in high school. Then like continue to do well in science and maths, all the courses. Then went into the chemical engineering program, and again, with the entire time the lens was, how do we understand the world in like simple unifying principles, the first principle approach. And what started as a seventh grader, I think that continues till day.
Yeah. I read a quote that I believe resonates with you, which is arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached.
Oh yeah,
So tell
yeah.
me about that.
Oh yeah, that's Swami Vivekananda. He was an Indian monk who traveled to the U.S. in late uh, 19th century. Yeah, I think he's actually, I'm carrying the book, like I'm reading his entire book, and it's in my backpack these days. But I think the point of it is, like, once you set your mind to something, you take all the approaches that are needed to get it done. And it just extends. It's not something that's someone's forcing you to do. I think it comes within. As I was explaining, I think it also runs in the family. Like my mom, she was she was reading about a fruit, so she was very passionate about nutrition. Oh boy! And after she like was done reading for like 14 or 16 hours, she was like, "This is what this does. These are the nutrients." I'm like, "Okay, okay." But I think it's like I think we all have that in common, and it's just I think it's just a state, and once you make peace with it, it's even more powerful.
Yeah. And so you grew up in India. So at what point did you come to the US? And yeah, what was that decision there? Was it for grad school or after that?
Yes, so I came shortly after I finished my undergraduate in India. I had gotten job offers. So as a chemical engineer, like the traditional lifestyle is you'll get a job in process engineering, and you can you can pursue that route. I had already finished an internship as a process engineer at one of the oil and gas field. And after spending a couple of months there, I had recognized that I had learned everything that there was, and I thought it was going to be very boring to continue that route. And one of the other things that I realized when I was undergrad, that I was really excited about research. It's just something that I like digging deep. I was naturally inquisitive, so and nobody wanted to be my project partner in the undergraduate, because it was just a funny experience that every time anybody would get assigned me as a partner, they were like no, they're like, this is gonna last forever. And so, 'cause- so not only we do the project that was asked, we were like, okay, we have to understand it, and so nobody wanted to be my partner. So I think already started picking on like some of those traits. So came to grad school. Um, Again, wanted to do actually polymers. It's funny that like I thought polymers would be a good direction. It didn't work out that year. A lot of faculty left in the polymer space. So through series of tangents, ended up in um, you know doing biophysics research. But yes, I think that was the transition, and I was like, okay, I didn't think I was a good fit in process engineering world. How do I pursue research? And my family was like, why don't you go to school in India? They're like, there are plenty of research programs here if you do want to do research. But after a lot of convincing, and I I I was like, okay, let's leave the safe territory. I've never liked being too comfortable to my own detriment. So I was like, okay, how can we make our life even more uncomfortable? I'd actually never been on a plane in my life before, like flying to US. So it was my
Really? What was
yeah,
that like?
it was thrilling. I was very excited, and I think I had kind of late teenage angst. I should have acted out when I was a teenager, but no, I had to do it when when I was out of that phase. So I was very excited. I was like, "Ah, I'm ready to leave." Like I was like, "Ah, my family is so annoying. I'm ready to leave. Go." Left the country with I think I had about $800 to leave the country. Didn't have a place to live, so I was like, "We'll figure it out." I think I still have I think I only used $300 of that, and till date I have those $500 have been saved. I borrowed money from my friends for like to pay the rent, so managed my way like for first couple of months, but really kind people. I think I've been very fortunate to have uh, these Indian graduate students who were at Texas A&M, which is where I went to school. They
Yeah.
let me stay there for 2 weeks. Meanwhile, I found place, and it was a wild ride. I think I didn't have a bus ticket, or like to come from Houston to College Station, which is a 2 hour. So I don't know. I would not recommend that to other people, but I don't know. I have been this way. Yeah.
Yeah. I know what you mean. I mean, it was the same when I came over for my postdoc. It's exciting, right? You haven't figured everything out, but you will. And there's just, a whole world of opportunity out there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, yeah, with a lot of immigrants, that's one of the things in common. So even if to whatever extent we could put like maybe 70% of the things in place, but that 30%, you got to live with the chaos.
Yeah, definitely. So were you even interested in microbial biology at that point? Was it even on your radar when you came over?
Actually, this is another funny part. In 10th grade, in India, so you get to decide your specialization in 11th or in 12th grade. Either you're going to pursue a medical route, non-medical, arts, commerce, and so biology was still rote memorization to me, and I was like, I'm out of this. This this makes no sense to me. Also, I think I did not have the courage to carry out dissections. I'm like, I'm out. I'm not pursuing the medical route, and that was the end of biology learning for me. Only for it to like come back later on. It's I think I was able to take more of an engineering or biophysics or more physics approach to understand biology, and my learning primarily has been on job. So I never took any biology course after the 10th grade course, only for my research to be, I think at this point we have 10 plus papers, and they're all biology, microbiology, but I think they're all rooted in like taking that first principle approach. How can we explain a certain phenomenon from those universal laws? And I don't have the burden uh, to have a textbook model, right? So how does something work? I'm like, oh, I don't know, we'll figure it out. So you can ask those questions, which while because someone's an expert, they would not care to think about. But I, through my own you know amateurness or naivete in the field, I was able to ask, and each of them have been a publication. So it's been great.
Yeah, that has been great. Yeah. So you finished grad school, and it's funny now because now you're in industry and you're the founder of a company. So, uh, were you thinking you might go straight off into industry? So, because I know you ended up pursuing a postdoc. So, how did you know that postdoc research was sort of right for you versus already branching off at that point?
Yeah, so at towards the end of PhD, one of my PhD committee members, they were like, "Oh, how do you think about the bacteria?" So I started to study bacterial flagellar motor, right, which is what provides it the torque, the propulsion to swim around, right, but at a very micro scale. And so I was taking a very biomechanical approach. I was like, "Oh, this is what happens in terms of forces, the physics, the chemistry," but I actually had not entertained the biochemistry. And they asked me this question, that if they change the certain residues on the protein of the flagellar motor, what happens? And I'm like, what? So even though I was studying biology, I think I didn't have the appreciation of what like the biochemical basis of it were. So I was like, oh, that's a great question. And I was like, my PhD has come to an end, so I don't know if I can answer that right now, but I will pursue the postdoctoral route to understand that. And so my interest was deepening the knowledge of biology, because I think I had that sort of imposter syndrome related to, I was like, oh, I don't know enough about biology. Like I didn't feel comfortable carrying through some of the discussions, because how can I reasonably participate when I don't have that framework? So I wanted to broaden and deepen at knowledge at the same time. So that's when I found the project related to biopolymers in microbes. So bacteria make different biopolymers, and I was always interested in polymers, right? And somehow started to do microbiology. This is where the convergence of the two was, and also learning like, the biochemistry. So I decided to pursue this route, even though I think I'd also gotten a job offer even at that point. So a Japanese company had offered me a position, but it was right around the time of pandemic as well. So I was figuring out what directions to go, and I was like, okay, let's deepen our knowledge a little bit further. So
Was
that's
it? Would you have had to move to Japan?
yes, actually,
Wow. Back on the plane, Ravi.
yeah, yeah. I think it was it was funny because they gave me the job because they thought I was funny for a scientist. It's so
Is that a compliment or not?
I think it's a compliment, and I can give you like a background to what sparked that conversation. So the interview happened in San Diego. It's a Japanese company. It's a pretty big company. They were trying to open their U.S. headquarters, and they were deciding between East Coast and West Coast. And on West Coast, they did not have an office yet, and it was a business position. And I have I had zero knowledge about business or and also interest, but I decided to apply anyway. I was like, okay, we'll figure it out. Uh, the interview was out of a resort because they didn't have the office, and since I was new to the area, I decided to show up like an hour early because I was like, there's no way I'm gonna figure out what's going on. So while I'm waiting at the resort. Or well, I arrive early and I tell the receptionist that, hey, I'm here for the interview and I'm early. And then later on, the resort staff tried to interview me for the janitor position, and because apparently they had scheduled another interview and they tried to take me, and I was like, I don't think that's the right interview.
It's not what I had in mind.
Yeah. And they're like, no, you're this is the interview. And I was like, no, that's not I am pretty certain that that's not the right interview. And anyway, so the interviewers show up like 5 minutes later, and I told them that I'm glad that they showed up because I almost accepted another job offer, and they were so entertained that they created a position for me, even though I had no business expertise.
Oh, I'm a janitor of biopolymers.
They just saw that I was like, oh, you're like a scientist with sense of humor. So like we're gonna create a position for you. So
Wow. It's
yeah,
funny because, you just said then that like business was just not in your mind whatsoever. And so, we met at Scripps Research there in San Diego, and you're a postdoctoral researcher in, yeah, microbial biology, like background in polymers as well. And so at what point did it sort of strike you that you thought, oh, like I could go into business? Like, what were you thinking for your career decisions? Because this is exactly the problem I had, right? It's like I knew, oh, actually I don't want to stay as a academic and follow that track. I want to go off and do something different. So yeah, what was that realization for you?
so again, there is a background to it as well. So my when I was when I was growing up in India, so the other part was that I don't come from like family of scientists or engineers. It's grew up in a low income, lower middle class family, which with background in farming and businesses. So my uncles are shopkeepers and such. So my family was like, you have now finished 10th grade, so you can time to start your business. And I was like, no. Like that's when I like had started to realize that I really want to, you know I don't want to fail the classes, and I'm liking the science part. So I refused. I was like, this is beneath me, that kind of attitude. I was like, I'm too smart to do business. Although I did not know what business meant and how it's equally hard work. I just was being a teenager. uh, but all these years, like let's say 2 decades later, like you come back to it on your own terms. When I was deciding which direction to go, and academia, I always thought I'd be a professor. Actually, that was my self vision. I really enjoyed working with people. I really enjoyed teaching. I got good at research more and more as I worked on it. But I always felt a bit of a misfit in the academic world. I think for me, it's like an inherent that it's about that carefreeness, about you learn something and you're really passionate about it and be able to do different things, which in academic world you do require sort of a deep focus for a really long period of time, which seemingly was not me. And more I was realizing it, that hey, I'm good at the technology part, the science part, and I've been able to change my direction so many times to and be good at it. Can we take this, still the technology, the passion for technology and first principles, and do something with it, which is not completely abandoning the academic route? So a technology focused, an R&D company which is able to bridge all these gaps and make a scalable technology, like either you can pursue it in academic route, or you can do it as a startup. And I think we have I've not looked backwards. So this is fun, and yeah, I think this is what it was meant to be. I'm
Yeah,
fully engaged.
definitely. We're both misfits, I guess, in that sort of sense. But what is that process like then? How do you? When is it official that you are sort of the founder of a startup? How do you actually go about, making the, I guess, the technology or the discovery into a legitimate entity?
Yeah, I think that was also quite a bit of a process, and I think I believe in doing the diligence. So when I even first entertained the idea that I could be a founder, right? So I was at a networking event. I was like, oh, what do people do in industry? So I'd been going. I think I'd for more than 2 years before, or 3 years before I even entertained the idea. I was going to all these workshops, networking events to understand what people were doing. Like how do you narrow down your choices? And I decided to pitch, this idea at a competition, like at a local incubator. And I didn't even know what like some of those terms were. They were like, oh, they wanted like the business model, and I'm like, I can build a mathematical model, but I don't know what this specifically this means. There are like a bunch of requirements. So I was like, okay, let's just entertain like a pie in the sky idea. I wrote up the application, um, made it to the semifinals of a competition. um, didn't win, but next time again I pitched the idea, won the competition based on the feedback that I had received. That gave me 1 year of free lab space and office space to operate out of in San Diego, which is pretty good. Uh, and then decided to participate in a lot of other programs, specifically the Wave Maker Lab at UC San Diego. um, so they had expert business advisors, and like some of the other founders who have gone taken things from 0 to 1, to scale up, or even like Fortune 500 companies. So they provided me feedback on um, what I needed to do. Not even what I needed to do is like, okay, I have this idea, right? I lack the language of the business world, so I would go there with the scientist mindset, or just willing to learn. And I would see that the entire council I would confuse very often. And I was like, okay. And I'm good at reading the micro expressions and body language. I was like, okay, these are extremely bright set of people, so I clearly did something to confuse them. So what can I do next time to improve on, like to make this communication better and receive the feedback in a manner that they are able to provide, right? They don't have the technology expertise, so I that just gets deferred to me. But the business elements, how do we integrate that? So each meeting I'd go, I'd fix the feedback they would provide me, iterate, uh, cause more confusion the next time, iterate. And then within once the lab space and everything started aligning up, that provided me the pathway that, okay, we are ready to move on and pursue this full time.
Yeah, and you've had so much experience now, I guess, and in pitching, pitching your idea, pitching your company. Are there some things that stick out as like key things that you need to make a good pitch, or like things you've learned during that process, and maybe places where others might go wrong?
Yeah, I think as a as a scientist, I'm constantly having to learn. I think my default mode is just go hardcore in technology and deep space. Do not do it. I think that's it's only in our head, right? So the time we spend for building the technology, that's critical to all of us, and we spend day in and day out. But instead of how, I continue doing the pitches, it's about what problem does it solve for the market. How does it's not an R&D problem. It is it's a business problem. How does somebody make a profit, or how does it solve a big unmet need in the market? So I pitched at South by Southwest, and when we were doing the rehearsal, the one of the coaches came up to me and mentioned, are you a scientist? and they could tell based on just how I describe or how I was approaching my pitch, and they're like, tone it down, tone it down. So I'm still learning how to tone it down.
It's tricky, isn't it? Marrying sort of the story, problem solution, with the right level of technical detail, depending on the audience.
Yes, and yeah, it's almost. I think it's easier to take a step back because I think you lose audience, right? So a technology to be truly powerful, it requires all those stakeholders. So even though as when I was in graduate school, I refused to dumb down my presentation. I was like, they need to meet me where I'm at, and I was like, that's not a very high ask, but that's not how world changing things happen. You require so many different partners. So for me, that realization that how do you reasonably engage, right? So you have to involve multiple stakeholders, and the only way you can do it is by simplifying the information and getting out of out of your head, and also simplifying. The key is simplify, simplify, simplify. And as I've also been working with my team, right, like they've been working on the bench, let's say, they come give me some information, I'm like, I have no context for it. So you can clearly empathize with when you go present and do all this technology overload at somebody, even though they might be in a position to make a change or want to make change, but if your information was dense and it just did not come across, it's a failure. So that's one of the things that I'm learning, that make it simplified for everybody and accessible for everybody.
Yeah, I mean that is one of the core skills, right? Being able to bridge all those stakeholders and speak those sort of multiple languages. And yeah, so I guess in your case, you have this company now, creating bioplastics. So ChakraTech, love the name. How did that come about?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to for me to be able to explain the name. So one of the classes that I did not fail was Sanskrit classes. So in middle school, I started taking Sanskrit as one of the language. I think it was mandatory until at least eighth grade, but I continued even after that. So the word chakra literally in Sanskrit means wheel or the circle, and because the circular economy is such a core part to how I envision the technology to go, and really core part of our identity. There was no better word than chakra to represent the circular economy. So ChakraTech.
Love
That's
it.
where the name came about.
I love it. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And so returning to sort of the technology itself, I guess, what is this process like for creating, bioplastics, and how long does it take?
Right. The process of making the polymer.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So very cool question again. So the word chakra, as I was saying, right? So uh, it means circle. So our goal is to use waste carbon as a feedstock. So waste carbon in different forms. It can come from um, animal waste, agricultural waste, food waste. You can envision different kind of waste carbon streams. Feed them to microbes. Well, one example before I go into the microbes is also greenhouse gas as a feedstock, right? It's a waste. It's a waste of carbon from different industries. You feed it to the microbes, uh, and because microbes require carbon just like we require sugars or different form of carbon sources, and they make the biopolymer. And when they degrade, they will complete the circle. So they will degrade back into the atmosphere, completing the chakra. So the process is, it is scaled in a manner that the way humans have been getting drunk for thousands of years, fermentation, right? So the fermenters are these large vessels where you have the microbes growing, and you're feeding it whatever carbon source that your technology is focused on, and then you let the microbes store the carbon. So this polymer specifically that we are making, it's a sort of a bacterial fat, right? So I store my fat around my waist. Microbes store the fat in form of these carbon storage structures, which are actually type of biopolyesters, and are can be used to make the biodegradable plastics. So as you know, the microbes, my microbe of choice is bacteria, because they grow. Their doubling time is pretty fast, which means that from 1 to 2, let's say if in case of your standard bug E. coli, it would take 20 minutes. So from 2 to 4, it will take another 20 minutes. So it has a very fast doubling time. So usually the process overall would take about 3 to 4 days to make. So you're starting from small cultures and you're going to large millions of liter reactors. So it can vary from 3 to 5 days in cases, but also how what kind of scheme that you want to employ your fermenter. Do you want to hold the fermenter for a certain time so that bacteria use as much of the carbon as possible, or is it continuously operating, which is one of the traditional ways chemical refineries operate? So various different modes. But when we make it in the lab, right now it's taking us about anywhere between 3 to 5 days to make like small quantity. But the idea is similar, that just the way a chemical industry is continuously operating and producing, we eventually want to be able to produce in a continuous manner. So there's no lag time, and then you know to replace trillions of tons of plastic, that well, it's million tons, 400 million tons specifically. But if you think about the needs for the humanity as we grow, we need a technology that's scalable, and this is what a scalable technology looks like.
Yeah. I mean, you talked about those, hundreds of millions of, is it pounds of plastic, you say?
Tons,
Tons?
400 million metric ton.
Metric tons. And so, with that in mind, one of the things I think is a massive awareness of now, for good reason, is like the issue of current microplastics that can show up in our food, water supply. So, these can be really disruptive now to our health. We're realizing. So, do you know if bioplastics have any of these issues? Could they solve this problem?
Again, a great point. And this is actually, I think, even then more than the plastics being a waste problem, right, or being an environmental issue, which they're already big concerns on their own. Microplastics, which we're barely starting to understand, right? The data is not all there yet, and I used to take a very skeptical look at it. I'm like, oh, how much of it's fear mongering versus reality. So again, bioplastics, as we mentioned, that there are different categories. So I'm going to focus on the one that I like, or is focus of our technology: biodegradable polymers, the one that are home compostable. So interesting thing is, all life forms make this kind of polymer, and that's why they're not foreign. So even if they made like some particle, when it goes into your body, it does not strike a foreign response. It's not alien to your body. And however, if you think about traditional plastics, when they break into microplastics and nanoplastics, actually, that's something that people don't even talk about. Because we can barely measure. We have no idea how many nanoplastics are entering into our body. They get once you're in the nano limit range, it can easily enter your bloodstream, and it then all the vital organs are in question as well. And if you look at the data, so I took a very quantitative approach last year as we were building the company, that what is the data to support you know the idea of microplastics being a problem, and how much of it's just hearsay or fear mongering. uh, so it turns out that most reliable data has been within the last few years, and they found microplastics in brain, in your heart tissue, and there's a correlation between the increasing of whether dementia or cardiac arrest. And even if it's not true, I don't think we would want to wait to know, right? I think that's what it gets down to. These biodegradable polymers overcome those challenges because they're not foreign. They it's if actually a couple of these biopolymers, even in the range that we are making, they're FDA approved to even be used as an implant. So they do not strike a foreign response, and they overcome the challenges of massively disturbing problem of microplastics.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, it's like the companies, not just materials, but I guess health focus, I suppose, on that in that vein too. So where is ChakraTech at right now? I mean, are you What's your kind of next milestone? Are you currently still raising funds, or what's the sort of near and longer term future?
Yeah, so we we have been able to bring the company to this stage purely based on bootstrapping. Actually,
Nice.
uh, we won the grant. We were also very fortunate to have a lot of people donate chemicals. So we did our proof of concepts based on donated chemicals, donated equipment. So we've been very fortunate that way. There's bit of work for us to do in terms of technical milestones. For this plastic to be affordable, the, and we need to demonstrate that it can utilize the carbon sources efficiently. So we are meeting those technical milestones right now. Right now we are in gram scale. The obvious next step is also to take it to increase the scale. So our next milestones are doing those fundraisings to grants. Been writing a lot of grants, and also uh, once we have met all the technical milestones and also made different kind of polymers to serve different industry, we will open it to general investment as well. So that's the outlook right now.
Wow, very exciting. So when you think back, what do you think it sort of takes to become an early stage founder? And I suppose within that, embedded within that, is like what advice you might give people, or current researchers who might actually think they want to get involved in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would have to think deeply about this, but well, it's more than I think what it takes. I think I've never thought that there's one way to success. I think that there are always different pathways. So my pathway does not need to match up with someone else's. But I think one of the things that I've seen, or with a lot of people that inspire me, is that sense of risk taking. Once you feel that you have accumulated enough experience, um, which actually tends to be the case with scientists, right? So we've been doing a lot of our researchers have been doing like a lot of what we have been doing at. But once you're good and you feel that you're ready to take the plunge, what you're in is not working, and you want to go into the unknown, and you're okay, comfortable with the gray zones. That's when I think you're ready. You're ready for entrepreneurship track.
Yeah, prepared
And
for the unknown.
yeah, the path to the unknown. And the advice, again, I think I find that interesting because I think I am constantly in need of advice. So I don't think I have the wisdom, but I'm gonna steal Steve Jobs' wisdom that also resonates very deeply with me. It's his idea of stay hungry, stay foolish. That kind of really resonates, and it's been independent of whether I was a researcher or just doing running a startup, learning everything. It's no one day is same, but that's okay. We will figure it out, and the more often you do it, that is a muscle that builds. So that's all I think I can share. But this is a piece of advice that I have to constantly go back to. So it works for me, and hopefully it will work for all the other people listening.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. It's like the precursor to the master is the fool, right? It can't be any other way, and that sort of marks the transformation.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a wise saying. I'd have to steal it.
Yeah. So how else are you spending your time when you're not making biodegradable plastics? I remember the last time we spoke, you spoke about your body moving uncontrollably at Punjabi music. Is that
Oh
still the
God,
case?
that's also documented. Uh, well, I still cannot help myself from grooving to the beats. It's every music that's catchy that it'll throw me on the dance motions. But actually, the fun part of being in San Diego is that I get to go on a lot of hikes and go to the beach. I think I've explore most of the hikes here, and now we're starting to even go out. It's so funny that that San Diego has so many different climates. Even like an hour outside, you're like, okay, this is new terrain. So that's something that I've been really enjoying. I've been I've been hoping to learn how to swim properly, because I don't know how to swim properly, and go to surfing. So that's next on the list. But every time with the startup, the idea is that when I start being inefficient, I take a break. Can't pretend that I'm working uh, when I'm not efficient. So the goal is to be productive, and any activity that will help me snap out, whether it's hike or long walk on the beach or a very good movie. I'm a big cinephile, so I'm always looking for good movies. And sometimes when you're overwhelmed, I take a break, and it's like you know the days started all over again. So all those things help me.
Yeah, sometimes it's just great to be able to detach and come to the problems fresh. So yeah, and San Diego is a special place for that, definitely. Well, maybe I'll end. Final sort of question, I suppose, is that I like to throw at all my guests, and I know you just brought up some wisdom, but maybe I'll just ask you, if you could give your one piece of advice or wisdom in the area of work, productivity, growth or health, relationships, anything. What do you think it would be and why?
Okay. I would tell people to be comfortable with the unknown. I think that's what uh, every time, I think I've made peace with it by doing it often, and just being okay with in general in unknowns. But I think humans, curiosity is one of the distinguishing factors. And I mean, other animal kingdom uh, like also show, right, that remarkable inquisitivity. So I think just pursuing that, and staying true, and like how, no matter how scary that is, I think that's one way to continue uh, growing as a human, right? And I think we are all here to do something beyond us, and I think that's one way to figure that out. And it doesn't matter whether you succeed or fail. It's always good. It's worth the shot.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think I completely agree. It's in the unknown is fear, but also opportunity. And I try to remind myself that fear is what is it? It's like a mile wide, but only an inch deep, quite often. So
Right, right. And
getting past that towards the opportunity.
yeah, and I think I don't know where I read this. It's like false evidence appearing real, right? So that's what someone said fear was. So that's you gotta question your assumptions. So it's one gets better with it, as you try more. So just take the deep dive.
Yeah, and just constantly practice that. Yeah, very cool. So where should people go then if they maybe want to follow you, learn more about your work or ChakraTech?
Yeah, so I would encourage people to go to chakratechworks.com. So ChakraTechWorks.com. And you can sign up for our newsletter, also see some cool videos on how microbes make this biopolymer, and we'll keep you posted on some of the updates. That's one way to follow about company. You can also find me on LinkedIn, and that's I'm pretty responsive on LinkedIn, if I can keep track of my day. But yeah, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer, and even give a chat or give a phone call to understand your needs. How do you want to change the world? So let's partner and solve this problem together.
I love it, Ravi. That's the pod. I really appreciate you connecting with me.
Yeah, no, thank you, Drew. Thank you for your patience, and giving me the opportunity to speak with you again.